It's just under 20 kilometers of highway, but for generations it felt like miles of separation. From Mombasa to Diani, the sea and the ferry held sway. But now, Ukunda's future has been reshaped by asphalt and ambition. This is a story of how one road, the Dongo Kundu Bypass, turned the south coast from remote to reachable and changed life in Ukunda forever. To understand Ukunda today, you must first see where it stood before. Ukunda, a coastal town in Kwale County, sits adjacent to the vibrant stretch of Diani Beach. Its population, roughly 70,000 to 80,000 as of the last census, has long depended on tourism, fishing, small trade, and seasonal migration. But its connections were constrained. Travelers from Mombasa, air travelers heading south, cargo trucks all had to navigate into Mombasa Highland, cross the Likoni Ferry, then emerge toward the coast. The ferry system, active since 1930s, carried hundreds of thousands of people and vehicles daily, but it brought bottlenecks, delays, and uncertainty. Imagine this. You plan a safari, you land at Moi International Airport, and your transfer to Diani could take up to 2 hours subject to ferry queuing, mechanical delays, weather, or breakdowns. That was the norm. Over time, economists and planners identified this as a drag on growth. In the Vision 2030 agenda, coastal development, tourism, infrastructure investment were flagged as essential. But to unlock the south coast, Ukunda, Diani, Tiwi, Kwale, something more structural had to change. Enter the Dongo Kundu Bypass, a government-backed initiative conceived to bypass the ferry entirely, decongest Mombasa, and rewire the transport logic of the region. The bypass stretches roughly 17.5 kilometers, some sources say 18 kilometers, from Ritini on Mombasa mainland to Ngombeni on the south coast. It connects major transport corridors, the Mombasa-Nairobi Highway, Mombasa-Malindi, and Mombasa-Lunga. The project has 3 phases, including bridges, viaducts, and interchanges, funded in part by a concessional Japanese loan by Japanese International Cooperation Agency. This was no ordinary road. It was to be a mega project, a civil engineering feat across swamp, sea, and reclaimed land. A test of Kenyan's capacity to invest in high-end infrastructure and a potential pivot for the economy of the coast. So when the first section opened in 2018, many called it a tentative step. But the full opening in 2024 promised the full promise, and Ukunda, it was waiting. The building of the bypass was neither smooth nor simple. Its challenges mirrored the scale of ambition. The first phase was Miritini to Kiphebu. Work began in 2015. The first stretch, about 10 kilometers, was awarded to China Civil Engineering Construction Corporation. It was financed by a Japanese International Cooperation Agency loan, bearing a low interest rate of 1.2% over 30 years with a grace period. Phase 1, costing roughly 11 billion Kenya shillings, was completed and commissioned in June 2018 by President Uhuru Kenyatta. But this first phase was just a lead-in. The true logic lay in what came next. Phase 2 and Phase 3, sea bridges, viaducts, and the long stretch. The phase involved crossing open water and wetland terrain, constructing major bridges. The first bridge, the Mwache Bridge, 660 meters, the Suza Viaduct, 690 meters, and Tenza Bridge, which is 1.4 kilometers. Construction was led by a Fujita Mitsubishi consortium for certain packages. By August 2024, the bypass was officially open to the public traffic, although some finishing touches remained, with the project reporting to be 96 to 98% complete. Cost and funding. Estimates differ slightly among sources, but one figure holds sway. 40 billion Kenya shillings is frequently cited. Some press say part of the project was valued at 24 billion Kenya shillings for the bridge sections only. One news sources in 2025 puts it at 45 billion Kenya shillings total of the 18 kilometers scope. The terrain itself was hostile: swamp, tidal waters, shifting soils. Bridges had to be anchored in deep foundations. Engineers deployed heavy piling, marine works, and sophisticated structural solutions. Then there was land acquisition and compensation, a common source of delay in Kenyan infrastructure. Communities around Suza, Mwate, and Mteza had land to be compensated. Disputes and verification slowed progress. Vandalism and theft of materials also became an issue, leading to losses in the millions. The COVID-19 pandemic introduced supply chain disruption, travel restrictions, and workforce slowdowns, but project timeline held with careful adjustment. Still, the political will remained firm. National and county governments pushed for deadline, especially as tourism and traders clamored for better roads. By 2024, motorists began to use the bypass. Reports circulated that trip times from Ritini or the airport to Diani dropped dramatically from 2 hours down to about 30 minutes. Local tourists emerged. Fishermen who have formerly lost fresh catch due to ferry delay now deliver early. Tour operators saving hours for clients. At the same time, debate erupted over plans for tolling. The Kenya National Highways Authority confirmed to tolling policy was under development, subject to public input. Motorist groups pushed back, arguing that charging tolls on road built in part with public funds would be unfair. And yet, in Ukunda and Diani, people were already feeling shift. Fewer ferry queues, fewer delays, and renewed sense that growth might come faster than before. What does one bypass mean for an entire coastal region? How does it ripple into economy, mobility, and identity? Economic growth and tourism boost. Ukunda, already tied intimately to Diani tourism brand, stands to benefit significantly. The reduced travel times make same-day access easier for international travelers. Hotels, resorts, tour operators, and restaurants in Ukunda and Diani now have access to a wider catchment market. In press coverage, the bypass described as a game changer, expected to bring more visitors and boost coastal economies. Real estate values have already shown signs of uptick. Landowners in Diani see capital gains as accessibility improves. The bypass also underpins the planned Dongo Kundu Special Economic Zone. The Special Economic Zone is around 3,000 acres adjacent to the bypass and the port, designed to host industrial, logistics, tourism, and enterprise zones. Proponents argue that this will draw foreign direct investment, create jobs, and anchor value-added industries on the coast. The link to broader transport infrastructure is critical. The bypass connects the standard gauge railway corridor and the Moi International Airport, turning the coast into a node in Kenya's export and logistics network. Mobility and urban dynamics. For locals, mobility has transformed. Villages and towns along the bypass corridor, Mwache, Sunza, Wombeni, now sit on a faster axis. Commuting, goods transport, delivery services, and access to markets all see gains in efficiency. Congestion on the ferry and adjacent towns in Mombasa gradually eased. The bypass serves as a kind of relief valve for the port city. In Ukunda, new commercial development trades emerge. Roadside businesses, service stations, logistics hubs, hospitality clusters all see renewed viability. The bypass turns what was peripheral town into an accessible anchor, regional integration and trade. Beyond tourism, the bypass strengthens Kenya's position in East African logistics. Traffic from the interior or from Tanzania can skirt Mombasa Highland and move south faster. The bypass is a cog in modern transport network. Trade flows, especially agricultural produce, seafoods, consumer goods, now face lower friction. Reduced delays means spoilage declines, margins improve, and supply chains are more reliable. Of course, the benefits are not equal. Displacement and land acquisition grievances remain unresolved in some quarters. Compensation delays affect trust. Environmental and cultural concerns have been raised, especially in coastal areas where mangroves, wetlands, or archaeological sites may be affected. Some community discussion online points to destruction of invaluable sites. Sustainability is also a question. Will the bypass be properly maintained? Will tolling and public access be balanced? Will expected development leave behind those who lack capital? Another thorn, tolling plans. If drivers must pay, will that dampen usage or limit equity? The Motorist Association of Kenya has vocally opposed tolling plans for our public road. Yet despite those debates on ground, Ukunda is already changing. More visitors, more movements, more hope. So, what comes next? The bypass is open, but it is only a foundation, not the summit. Vision 2030 and flagship infrastructure. The Dongo Kundu Bypass is listed among Kenyan's Vision 2030 flagship project, part of the push towards modern infrastructure investment, regional equity, and sustainable growth. The connected special economic zone, logistics cluster, and industrial nodes around the bypass represent the next wave, building an ecosystem, not just a road. Anticipated developments. Further road interchanges, feeder roads, and access ramps to towns will expand. The special economic zone is expected to incrementally host manufacturing, export processing, logistics, and tourism enterprises. Effort towards integrating public transport, buses, shared shuttles along the bypass corridor, possibly charging tolls, but with public participation to set rates and fairness. Upgrades to digital infrastructure, energy, water, and services that accompany growth. Risks. Delayed follow-up investment. Infrastructure is only useful if community services and regulations catch up. Overdevelopment or speculative land bubbles, pricing out local people. Environmental stress. Coastal ecosystem, drainage, sea level rise, and climate resilience must be factored in. Governance challenges, maintenance, oversight, toll transparency, and land compensation must be managed prudently. Yet, the potential is real. If the special economic zone attracts even a fraction of its intended investors, jobs will multiply, value chains deepen, and Ukunda will emerge not just as a tourism agent, but a center in its own right. We can imagine a future, travelers arriving in Mombasa, transferring to Diani in minutes, seaside towns with modern infrastructure, authorities near the coast processing seafood or agro-export produce, and a coastal corridor humming with trade and commerce. For Ukunda, the bypass is the script rewrite, from backwater hub, from a ferry reliant to front door. When the first car glided smoothly over the Mache Bridge, someone in Ukunda must have felt the ground shifting. The bypass is more than road, it's a possibility made concrete. What may Ukunda look like in 2030? A town with better schools, more jobs, cleaner streets, and greater connection to Kenya's heart. Perhaps it will become a secondary city, not overshadowed by Mombasa or Nairobi, but an emerging node in its own right. But the road does not guarantee destiny. It offers choice, speed, and access. The people, businesses, and institutions must now step through. If you are new here, subscribe for more stories on African transformation. What do you think about this project? Let us know in the comments. Your engagement helps more people discover Kenya's infrastructure journey. Until next time, may we all see how a road can reshape not just a land, but lives.